People think omegas are born soft, loved, protected, chosen. But no one tells you what happens when you're none of those things. The rain was cold, soaking through my coat and into my bones as I stood beneath the flickering cafe sign. I didn't care. I barely felt it anymore. Pain becomes background noise after a while, like breathing, like existing. The paper bag in my hands was light, too light. A loaf of day-old bread, a bruised apple, and the last of my money gone. I held it to my chest as if it could keep me together. That was when I felt it. An alpha. I didn't even have to look. My skin prickled, my scent glands tightening in fear. Every bad memory I'd ever had with alphas rose up at once. Hands that hurt, voices that lied, promises that broke. I almost ran, but my legs were tired of running. You're going to get sick standing out here. His voice wasn't harsh. That was worse. Kindness hurts more when you don't trust it. I lifted my head slowly. He was tall, broad-shouldered, rain darkening his hair. Powerful. The kind of alpha who could ruin someone like me without even trying. I'm fine, I lied. I always lied. Truth never kept me safe. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. Do you have somewhere to go? My throat closed. No, I didn't. No one ever waited for me anywhere. No, I whispered. The rain filled the silence between us. I expected him to walk away. That's what they always do once they realize you have nothing left to give. But he didn't. I'm not here to hurt you. Every alpha says that. Still, something in his scent was different. Not sharp, not greedy. Smelled steady. Like he wasn't looking at me as something to take. He stepped closer, but not too close. Like he was mindful of the space I didn't own but desperately needed. Rain dripped from his jaw, his expression unreadable under the dim streetlight. I know you don't believe me, he said quietly. But you can't stay here. I tightened my grip on the paper bag. The bread inside felt like it might crumble. Just like me. I don't need help. The words were automatic. A shield built from every time help had a price. He didn't push. Instead, his gaze dropped to my shaking hands, then back to my face. You're cold. I was freezing from the inside out, but admitting that felt like handing him a weapon. My name is Kale, he said, not offering a hand, not stepping closer, just giving me a name, as if that made him real, as if that made him different. I said nothing. Names were ties, and ties were anchors that could drag you under. There's a shelter 3 blocks from here, he continued. It's clean. Omega Run. No alphas allowed past the front desk. I'd heard of it. I'd also heard it was always full. It's full, I whispered. Not tonight. He reached slowly into his coat. I flinched. He pulled out a small white card and held it out between 2 fingers. They have a bed for you. I called ahead. Why? The question screamed in my chest, but I couldn't make my lips say it. I don't understand, I said, my voice cracking. For the first time, his steady expression softened. Not a smile, something sadder. You don't have to. Just take the card. Go get warm. The kindness felt like a trap. But the rain was so cold, and my food was so little, and I was so tired of being strong. My fingers finally released the bag. I reached out and took the card. Our fingers didn't touch. Thank you, I whispered. He nodded once. Then he did something no alpha had ever done for me. He stepped back. He gave me space, and he turned to leave. Wait. The word slipped out before I could stop it. He paused and looked back. Why are you doing this? His eyes met mine, storm gray and honest. Because once, he said quietly, someone left me standing in the rain. Then he walked away, disappearing into the city shadows. I stood there, clutching the card and my last meal, his steady scent still lingering in the air. It didn't feel like a claim, felt like a lifeline. And as I turned toward the address on the card, the rain didn't feel quite as cold anymore. The shelter was quiet. Not the heavy, dangerous quiet of the streets, but a soft, guarded quiet. The air smelled of bleach, cheap soap, and the faint, collective scent of other omegas. An invisible tapestry of anxiety, exhaustion, and the dull sweetness of suppressants. A beta woman at the front desk took the card from my shaking hand. She didn't ask questions, just nodded, and passed me a towel and a set of worn cotton clothes. Bed 14, curfew at 10. Lights out at 11. Breakfast at 7. Her voice was flat, routine. It was the most comforting thing I'd heard in weeks. The dormitory was a long room lined with narrow cots. Some omegas slept. Some stared at the ceiling. One cried quietly into a pillow. I found bed 14, sat down, and suddenly, the strength holding me upright drained away. The towel slipped in my hands. My body began to shake. I should eat. I should change. But I just sat there, because the door in my mind had opened. 3 years. 3 years I believed I was loved. His name was Julian, an alpha with a smile like polished silver, with promises that felt like sunlight. He chose me from across a crowded gallery, a shy omega intern holding a clipboard. "You're special," he told me. The first year was a dream. I moved into his sleek, modern apartment. He encouraged me to quit my tedious data entry job. "Let me take care of you, Leo. Your mind is for beautiful things, not spreadsheets." He filled my days with art classes, with fancy dinners where I met his important friends, with whispered plans for a future that gleamed like gold. I thought it was love. The control came quietly. It started with the credit card. "It's easier, darling. Just use this for household things. I'll handle the big finances." Then it was my car. "That old thing is a death trap. Use the town car service. It's already on the account." My name quietly disappeared from the joint account paperwork. My friends from before? They bored him, he said. They didn't understand our world. One by one, my calls went unanswered. I became a ghost in my own life. A beautifully dressed, perfectly quiet ghost, whose only purpose was to reflect Julian's light. My scent, once a bright, hopeful lemon verbena, grew muted, tinged with the ashen smell of constant, low-grade anxiety. I stopped painting. The canvases he'd bought for me stood blank in the corner. A silent accusation. The end wasn't a shout. It was a sigh. I found the receipt for the jewelry first. A necklace not for me. Then the hotel charges. The final piece was the letter from the bank, addressed to me, warning of imminent default on the penthouse I didn't even know was solely in my name. When I confronted him, he didn't even look at me. "You always were emotionally fragile, Leo. I carried you for years. The debt is yours. The failure of this project is yours." He finally looked at me, and his eyes held nothing. No love, no hate, just vacant ownership that had expired. "I found a true partner, one with strength. You have until the end of the month to be gone." He left that night. He took his clothes, his electronics, and the last shred of my reality. The month passed in a blur of silent panic. I sold what little was mine, the jewelry he'd given me, my small collection of books. It wasn't enough. The debt was a monster that had eaten me whole. On the final day, I stood in the empty, echoing penthouse. My suitcase held my remaining clothes, and a single framed photo of my mother, who had passed years ago, believing I was safe and loved. I had no family left to shame, no friends left to call. I walked out of the building and into the city. The first drops of rain felt like a baptism into a colder, harder world. I had enough cash for a few nights in a horrible motel, then a week in a hostel bunk bed, surrounded by snoring strangers. Then nothing. The rain that soaked me last night, under the flickering cafe sign, wasn't the first storm I'd been caught in. It was just the first one, where I had absolutely nowhere left to go. The paper bag in my hands held my last meal, bought with my last coins. The pain wasn't sharp anymore. It was the background hum of existence. I was a statue of failure, waiting to dissolve. My gaze fell to the white card, discarded on the blanket beside me. I picked it up again. Plain. Just the shelter's name and address. In simple type. No personal note. No phone number. Why would he just help? The question was a splinter in my mind. I turned the card over, as if the answer might be on the back. And that's when I caught it. Faint. So faint it was almost imaginary. A whisper of scent, clinging to the cardboard's edge, where his fingers had held it. Steady. It was the only word for it. Not the aggressive spice and smoke dominance I associated with alphas. This was deeper, calmer, like cedarwood after rain, like black tea, like the earth under the first morning sun. It was grounded. It didn't demand. It simply was. I brought the card closer to my face, my breath hitching. My own fearful citrus bitter scent should have overwhelmed it, but his didn't fight with mine. It lingered beneath, quiet, solid baseline. I closed my eyes, and I was back in the rain. Because once, he had said, someone left me standing in the rain. The memory of his voice, low and sincere, wrapped around the scent. It wasn't just a smell. It was a feeling of not being alone. In the downpour, a sudden, sharp shame burned through me. I was sitting in a safe place, warm and dry because of him, and I was sniffing a card like some desperate, scent-starved. I jerked the card away from my face, my cheeks flaming. I shoved it under the thin pillow, as if hiding the evidence. But it was too late. The scent was in my nose. The memory was in my bones. I changed mechanically, ate the bread without tasting it, and lay down in the dark. The shelter's sounds became a distant hum. The crying Omega quieted. Rain tapped softly against the high windows, and all I could think about was the scent. It didn't make sense. Alphas were chaos. They were sharp edges and sudden fires. They were hands that took. This was stillness. This was an anchor. What kind of alpha smells like a promise? The thought was dangerous. More dangerous than the cold, more dangerous than hunger. Hope was a predator with sharper teeth than despair. I turned onto my side, curling into myself. He's just a stranger, I told myself fiercely. He probably does this for every stray he finds. He'll forget you by morning. But I remembered the way he looked at me. Not at my body, not at the vulnerability in my posture. He looked at my face. He saw the exhaustion, the fear, and he hadn't looked away. Under the pillow, the card seemed to pulse with that faint, steady fragrance. It was a scent that offered no answers, only a quiet, unsettling contradiction to everything I knew. That night, my dreams weren't filled with darkness or running. They were filled with the scent of cedarwood and rain, and the gray, storm-calmed eyes of an alpha who walked away. 3 days at the shelter, and I still felt like a ghost. I followed the routines. I showered. I kept my head down. The other Omegas were shadows, and we moved around each other with a careful, silent understanding. We were all broken things, trying not to cut each other with our sharp edges. But I wasn't a ghost to myself. Not anymore. There was a new awareness inside me, a constant low hum of something. It was the scent, his scent. It clung to the white card, which I'd hidden inside the thin paperback book I'd found on the donations shelf. I told myself it was to keep it safe, to keep it flat. But at night, in the dark, I would open the book just a crack and let that quiet, steady fragrance of cedarwood and dry earth fill the small space around my cot. It didn't make sense. It was just a smell, but it felt like a shield. When the memories got too loud, the sound of a slamming door, the feel of a cruel grip on my wrist, I'd breathe in, and the storm inside me would calm, just a little. His scent was an anchor in a sea of my own panic. It also made me feel stupid, pathetic. What was I doing, getting a pathetic sense of safety from a piece of cardboard touched by a stranger? He was probably living his rich, alpha life, having completely forgotten about the drowned rat Omega he'd paid off with a phone call. On the 4th morning, Mara called me to the front desk. My heart instantly jackhammered against my ribs. He sent me away. The bed's only for a week. This is it. Relax, she said, her beta eyes missing nothing. She slid a small, clean paper bag across the desk. This came for you. For a second, the world tipped sideways. He found me. The thought was pure terror. And beneath the terror, a traitorous, shameful spark of something else. I don't want it, I whispered, my voice rusty from disuse. Mara didn't retract the bag. It's not from an alpha. It's from the pharmacy down the street. Paid for anonymously. She gave me a long, unreadable look. It sent neutralizing body wash, gland balm, and a pack of the good suppressant patches. The kind that don't give you a rash. I stared at the bag. These weren't gifts of luxury. They were gifts of invisibility, of safety. The kind of things a struggling Omega needed to move through the world without broadcasting their vulnerability. They were practical, thoughtful, and deeply personal. No one had ever given me something like this. Alphas gave presents that were claims, flashy things that smelled like them, that bound you to them. This was the opposite. Who? I managed to ask even though I knew. Mara just shrugged. a little too casually. Anonymous, like I said, could be a charity program. We both knew there was no such program. I took the bag back to my cot, my hands trembling. The products inside were unscented, clinical. But as I lifted the bottle of body wash, I froze. There, on the crisp, new paper of the bags folded over top. A faint, almost imperceptible transfer. Cedarwood. T. Steady earth. My knees felt weak. I sat down hard on the cot. He hadn't just paid for it. He'd handled it. He'd picked these specific things, paid for them, and put them in this bag. For me, the careful wall I'd been building around the memory of him, the wall that labeled him just another alpha, cracked. A strange, warm ache bloomed in my chest, right next to the old, cold scars. He was giving me a way to hide, to protect myself from everyone. Even, maybe, from him. Why would an alpha do that? That night, in the shower, I used the gland balm. It was cool and soothing on the tender skin over my scent glands. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the constant, low-grade anxiety of my own scent betraying my fear to the world. I felt contained, safe in my own skin. Wrapped in a towel, I looked at the paperback on my bed, the hidden card inside. The scent on the bag had been fresher, stronger, more real. He wasn't a ghost. He was out there, and he was thinking about what I needed. The realization was the most frightening and the most thrilling thing I'd ever felt. I didn't just have his scent now. I had a question that demanded an answer. And for the first time, the thought of finding one didn't make me want to run. It made me want to stand still and see what happened next. A week, the shelter's maximum stay. The paper bag of supplies was half empty, a quiet testament to the most stable stretch of time I'd known in months. I'd used the patches. My scent was a muted, neutral shadow, a cloak I wore with mixed relief and a strange sense of loss. At least when I smelled of fear, it was mine. Mara found me as I was neatly folding the donated sweater I'd worn. "You've got options," she said quietly. She held out 2 more plain white cards. "This one's for a longer-term group home across the city. Waiting list, but I can get you in. It's structured." She tapped the second card. "This one's a job. Dishwasher. At a little 24-hour diner called the Moonlight. Owner's a grumpy old beta who doesn't ask questions. It includes a room upstairs. Tiny. But it's yours." I stared at the cards. 2 different futures. One of controlled survival. One of exhausted independence. My throat tightened. I hadn't planned for a future in so long. "Who?" I couldn't finish. Mara's mouth quirked. Not quite a smile. The job came with a recommendation. A strong one. From a respected client of the diner owner. She looked at me pointedly. "The recommendation was that you're honest, and that you need a chance, not charity. Kale." He was shaping the world around me with quiet, invisible hands. Building a path I could actually walk. Not dragging me down it, just clearing the debris. It was unsettling. It was generous. Felt like being seen, truly seen, from a distance. And I didn't know what to do with that. "The diner," I whispered. A flicker of approval crossed Mara's face. "Good choice." The room above the Moonlight was indeed tiny. Just a bed, a dresser, and a window looking out onto a brick wall. But the lock on the door was solid. And when I turned it for the first time, the click was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. My space. My lock. The work was hard. My hands were in scalding water for hours, steam thick with grease, coffee, and fried onions. The owner, Gus, was indeed grumpy, barking orders with no pleasantries. It was perfect. He didn't care about my dynamics, my past, or my scent. He cared about clean plates and not wasting soap. It was brutally simple. I could do simple. But in the quiet moments, during my break on the rusty fire escape, or lying awake in my narrow bed, my mind didn't go to the heat of the kitchen. It went to the rain. It went to the scent of cedar. I started noticing things. Small things. A new, sturdy mat for the dish pit where I stood for hours, arriving mysteriously on the second day. The brand of tea that appeared in the staff kitchen. The same earthy black tea note that lived in his scent. Coincidences, maybe, but they felt like footprints. Like he was still there, just out of sight, making sure the ground wasn't too hard beneath my feet. Sometimes it made me angry. Who did he think he was, this guardian angel alpha? What was the endgame? The kindness felt so vast, so patient, that it created a debt I could never repay, and the weight of that unknown expectation was its own kind of cage. Then the nightmare came. A bad one. The worst in a long time. I woke in the pitch dark of my room, gasping, my sheets damp with sweat, the phantom sensation of hands gripping my shoulders. The suppressant patch on my neck felt like a lie. My heart tried to beat its way out of my chest. The four walls, my safe walls, felt like they were closing in. I couldn't stay there. Couldn't breathe. Before I knew what I was doing, I was pulling on shoes and a jacket over my sleep clothes. I slipped out the back door of the diner and into the cold, 3 a.m. silence of the alley. I just needed air, space, to outrun the feeling of being trapped. I walked without direction, breath pluming in the icy air, until my feet, acting on a memory older than thought, carried me to a familiar street, to the flickering cafe sign. I stood across the street, hugging myself, staring at the spot where I'd disintegrated and where a stranger had seen the pieces. And then I saw him. He was sitting at a small table inside the now-closed cafe, lit only by the dim glow of an emergency exit light. His head was in his hands, his broad shoulders slumped. He looked wrecked, not powerful, not steady. A man carrying a weight so heavy it was bending him in two. My breath caught. This wasn't the calm, composed Alpha from the rain. This was someone else. This was real. As if he felt the weight of my gaze, his head lifted slowly. He looked right through the glass, right into the shadows where I stood. Our eyes met. Time stopped. The street, the cold, the nightmare, all of it faded into a dull roar. There was only the shocking vulnerability on his face, and the terrifying fact that he was seeing me seeing him. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked at me, his storm-gray eyes holding an ocean of something I couldn't name. I see you here too. It was the most intimate moment of my life, and it was too much. The cage of his kindness shattered, and in its place was just a man, as haunted as I was. I turned and I ran, not from fear of him, but from the terrifying, overwhelming understanding flooding me. This wasn't a game. This wasn't charity. This was something else entirely, and I was standing at the edge of it, feeling the ground give way. I didn't go back to my room. My feet carried me on a looping, frantic path through the sleeping city until the sky lightened from black to bruised purple. The image of him, Kale with his head in his hands, burned behind my eyes. He wasn't a symbol anymore, not just kindness or a trap. He was a person who hurt, and I had run from him. Shame joined the fear and confusion in my veins, hot and prickling. He'd seen me see him, and I'd bolted like a startled animal, just like I always did. By the time I pushed open the diner's back door, the breakfast shift was starting. The smell of bacon and coffee hit me like a wall. Gus took one look at me. Sleep pants, jacket, wild hair, haunted eyes, and grunted. You look like death warmed over. Don't touch the plates. You'll scare the customers. Start on the potatoes. It was his version of mercy. Hidden work. Mindless work. I grabbed the peeler and sank into the rhythm, the simple motion anchoring my spiraling thoughts. Why was he there? At our place? In the middle of the night? Because once, someone left me standing in the rain. The words echoed with new, painful depth. What kind of rain was he standing in now? The potato in my hand blurred. I was so tired. Tired of running. Tired of decoding danger. Tired of being a puzzle made of broken pieces. And he was a puzzle too. One that somehow had a piece shaped exactly like my loneliness. Kid. I jumped. Gus stood nearby, wiping his hands on a towel, staring at the wall instead of me. That fellow. The one who vouched for you. My heart stopped. Yes. He's in booth 3. Has been for an hour. Just drinking coffee. His gaze finally dropped to mine. He asked if you were working today. I said you were. Didn't say you were back here hiding. A pause. You don't have to go out there. But hiding wears a man out faster than facing things. He walked away, leaving me shaking by the sink. He was here. After last night. After I ran. The urge to flee screamed in my blood. I could slip out the back. Hide in my room. Disappear. But I looked down at my hands. Potato starch. Faint earthy tea scent. I thought of the sturdy mat. The tea in the cupboard. The lock on my door. The choice he'd given me. He had never once forced me to look at him. Slowly, I set down the peeler. I washed my hands, the water scalding. Didn't think. If I thought I'd run. I just moved. Through the swinging door. Into the vinyl-seated diner. The morning light was pale. And there, in booth 3, was Cale. He looked up. Exhausted. Shadowed. But calm. Open. He didn't smile. He just waited. Every step across the checkered floor felt like walking through cement. I stopped at his table, gripping the booth for balance. I couldn't speak. He looked at me, really looked, and his scent reached for me. Not pushing. Just there. A quiet offering. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? He asked gently. For last night. For running. I saw you. And I ran. A long silence. You don't ever have to apologize for running, he said. Especially from me. My defenses cracked. Why were you there? He traced the rim of his coffee cup. I go there when the past gets too loud. He met my eyes. It's the place where I found the most important thing I've ever seen. My breath hitched. What? A reason to believe not all broken things stay broken, he said softly. I saw you holding yourself together with nothing but a paper bag. And I saw a strength so fierce it humbled me. Tears burned my eyes. No one had ever called me strong. His hand twitched like he wanted to reach out, then stopped. I'm not here to upset you, he said quietly. I just needed to know you were okay. After you ran. I needed to know I hadn't scared you away for good. Something inside me finally gave. You didn't scare me, I said. I scared me. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Can I? My voice shook. Can I sit? A soft, real smile touched his face. I would like that very much. And as I slid into the booth across from him, for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was walking toward it, whatever shape it would take, in this grimy diner at dawn, with an alpha who smelled like a promise. For now, it was enough. The diner coffee was bitter and burnt. I drank it anyway, cradling the thick ceramic mug between my hands, letting the heat seep into my skin. It was something to do. An anchor in the strange, quiet sea of sitting across from Cale. He didn't try to fill the silence. He just sat there, drinking his own coffee, his presence a steady, patient weight. It wasn't demanding. It was waiting. For me. Why? The word finally broke from me, small and cracked. Why all of it? The shelter. The job. I gestured vaguely, unable to name the mat, the tea, the invisible safety net. He set his mug down carefully. At first, it was just instinct, he said, his voice a low rumble. You were in pain. I could help. So I did. He looked out the window for a moment, at the city slowly waking up. Then, it became something else. What? My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. His gray eyes found mine. Curiosity. The word stole my breath. Not pity. Not a plan. Curiosity. About me. I whispered. About the Omega who looked at the world like it was a knife, he said, his gaze unwavering. About the strength it takes to stand in the rain when you have nowhere to go. About the scent of lemons and ash, and the person it belongs to. He paused, letting the words settle between us. I wanted to know if you'd ever look at the world and see something else. Something not sharp. My throat closed. No one had ever been curious about me. They'd been curious about what I could give them, what I represented. But this, I don't know how, I admitted. To see something else. I know, he said softly. It takes time. And safety. Is that what you're giving me? My voice trembled. Safety. He considered it. No, I'm giving you the chance to feel safe. The tools. The space. He met my eyes. I can't give you the feeling. That has to grow on its own. When it's ready. Something in me loosened. He wasn't promising to be my shield. He was showing me how to build my own door. The bell over the diner door jingled. A group of construction workers came in, bringing cold air and loud voices with them. The spell fractured. Cale glanced at them, then back at me. I should let you work. The reluctance in his voice made my chest tighten. Will you? The words died in my throat. He seemed to understand. He pulled a pen from his jacket and wrote on a clean paper napkin. 10 digits. Nothing fancy. Just ink on cheap paper. This is my phone, he said, sliding it across the table. It's not a demand. It's an option. He stood. If you have a question, If you need something. If you just want to talk. He placed cash under his mug. The coffee is terrible, he said, a faint smile touching his lips. But the company was the best I've had in a long time. And then he left. I watched him go, one last quiet nod through the window before he disappeared down the street. I stared at the napkin. The ink was already blurring slightly from the condensation. His scent clung to the paper. Gus came to clear the booth. He's a decent one, he muttered. Rare as hen's teeth. I folded the napkin carefully. The numbers felt like a secret. A choice. For the rest of my shift, the world felt different. The soap suds weren't just soap. They were the reason my hands were clean enough to hold that napkin. That night, in my tiny room, I opened the paperback. I placed the white shelter card on the dresser. Next to it, the folded napkin. 2 pieces of paper. 2 moments of kindness. 2 choices. I didn't text him. Not that night. But for the first time, I wasn't waiting for disaster. I was waiting for my courage to catch up to my curiosity. That felt like a future. A week passed. The napkin lived in the pocket of my work apron. A soft, worn square of potential. I didn't text. But I didn't throw it away either. It became a touchstone. When Gus's yelling got too sharp, or when a customer's alpha bark of laughter made my shoulders tense, I would press my fingers against the paper through the fabric. Cedar, earth, steady. A reminder that not all alphas were the same. That one, at least, was different. The curiosity he had spoken about began to burn in me. I was curious about him. What made an alpha like him? What did he do all day? Did he think about the rain, the cafe, and me? The question finally won on a quiet Thursday afternoon. The lunch rush had died. I was refilling the sugar jars, my hands moving on autopilot. My phone, a cheap prepaid thing, felt heavy in my back pocket. I set down a jar, wiped my hands on my apron, pulled out both the phone and the napkin. My heart hammered so loudly I was sure Gus could hear it in the kitchen. This was stupid. He had probably forgotten. He was busy. I would be a nuisance. But he had said, if you just want to talk. I typed the number in, my fingers clumsy. I didn't write a greeting. I didn't ask a question. I just stated a fact, the only one I felt I could claim. The coffee really is terrible here. I hit send before I could think. Instant regret. I shoved the phone back into my pocket like it was on fire and went back to the sugar jars, my face burning. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. The vibration shot up my spine. I pulled it out with shaking hands. No, I keep hoping Gus will see the error of his ways. How is the potato mountain? A wild, breathless laugh escaped me. He remembered that he was talking to me. I sent again. Conquered for today. New enemy. The grease trap. He replied back. A battle for the brave. I am on your side. 3 messages. That was all. But they lit up the dim back room of the diner. We didn't text again that day. But the line was open. A bridge, however narrow, had been built. It became a pattern. A small, secret rhythm in my days. I sent him fragments of my world. A complaint about the industrial dishwasher. A photo of a weird-shaped pancake. A note that the earthy tea was all gone. He always answered. Sometimes quickly. Sometimes hours later. He told me about his day. A frustrating meeting. A good book. A stray cat outside his office. His messages were like his voice. Calm. Steady. Grounding. Never demanding a reply. Just there. I began to save things to tell him. The way the sunset painted the brick wall outside my window orange. The name of the old song Gus hummed when he thought no one was listening. Tiny, insignificant details of a life I had thought was too broken to be worth sharing. But with him, they felt like treasures. One night, after a long shift, aching and tired, I lay in bed and typed. I used to be afraid of the quiet. Now the quiet here is the only thing that feels like mine. The reply came fast. What does your quiet sound like? No one had ever asked me that. I listened. Really listened. Then sent. The hum of the neon sign downstairs. The drip of the faucet I haven't fixed. My own breath. Sounds peaceful. Cale replied. That is a beautiful sound. Tears burned behind my eyes. He wasn't offering to fix the faucet. He wasn't mocking the cheap neon sign. He was just listening with me, honoring the peace I had found. And suddenly I realized something. I was telling him the sound of my own thoughts. and he was hearing them, not as the ramblings of a broken omega, but as words worth reading. I was waiting to see what he would say next. The fear was still there, a whisper, but it was being drowned out by something new, something brighter, the sound of my own voice, and the man on the other end who seemed to think it mattered. The texts became the scaffolding of my new life. I'd wake to a simple morning. Hope the grease trap loses today. And something tight in my chest would loosen. We built a world in those messages. A safe, neutral territory made of shared sunsets, book quotes, and complaints about Gus's questionable meatloaf. But there was a line we didn't cross. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't talk about dynamics in any real way. And one evening it hit me, he had never asked my name. He called me you in his texts. In the diner, it had just been looks and silence and understanding. The shelter card was blank. The job recommendation was for the Omega from the shelter. He had given me everything: safety, space, patience, without asking for the most basic piece of me in return. Felt intentional, like he was waiting for me to offer it, to trust him with that fundamental piece of my identity. The power of that hummed through me. He wasn't claiming me. He was leaving a space for me to step into, and that terrified me. A name makes things real. It weaves you into someone else's story. My old name was tied to whimpers in the dark, to shouted insults. I hadn't spoken it aloud in years. I'd buried it. But the person I was now, the one who conquered potato mountains, and had opinions about dish soap, maybe he deserved a new name, or maybe the old one deserved to be washed clean by this quiet, gentle peace. The decision sat in my chest for days. Then, on a rainy afternoon much like the first one, but with me dry and warm inside the diner, I knew. Rain streaked down the window. I texted him. It's raining again. A moment passed. Kale, I know. I'm at the cafe. The sign is still flickering. My breath caught. He was there. At our place. My fingers trembled. I sent another one. Do you have an umbrella? Kale, no. Do you? A smile touched my lips. I replied again. No, but I'm inside. I stared at the screen. This was it. The space he'd left open was wide now. Waiting. I typed slowly. Every letter felt like stepping off a cliff. My name is Leo. Sent. For one horrible, endless minute, there was nothing. Cold panic crept into my chest. I'd misjudged. It was too much. Too intimate. My phone buzzed. Leo. Just that. My name. The way he wrote it, like he was tasting the word, holding it carefully. Another message. It suits you. Strong. Gentle. Tears blurred my vision. He saw strength. He saw gentleness. In a name I thought was only a synonym for pain. Thank you for telling me, Leo. He wrote it again. And this time it didn't sound broken. It sounded like something precious. I didn't reply. Couldn't. I just pressed the phone to my chest, right over my pounding heart, and let the rain wash against the windows. The flickering sign he was standing under was the same, but everything else had changed. Knowing he knew my name changed the texture of the air. When my phone buzzed now, it wasn't just a message for the Omega from the diner. It was for Leo. It was for me. The world, which had always felt vast and hostile, now held a single, specific point of connection that was entirely mine. We kept texting. The conversations deepened, like roots slowly reaching for water. He told me about his work. He ran a small architecture firm that restored old buildings, which somehow fit him perfectly, patient, careful, saving things instead of replacing them. I told him about the elderly Omega who always ordered soup and said I had kind eyes. We built each other slowly, piece by piece. No rushing, but it was all digital. All words on a screen. The memory of him in the diner, of his quiet eyes, of his scent, began to feel like a dream. And I realized, with a nervous ache, I missed the reality. One evening, after I sent him a photo of a perfect double-yolked egg I'd cracked during prep, his reply changed. That's a good omen. Leo, I have a question. You can say no. It won't change anything. My blood went still, then rushed. This was the moment when kindness usually revealed its price. I replied, okay. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. There's a park near the river. The one with the old iron bridges. It has a greenhouse. It's quiet. Even on weekends. I go there to think. I wondered if you might like to see it. With me. In person. I read it 5 times. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't even a date. It was an invitation into a place he loved. With an escape built into it. Fear curled in my stomach. To be near him again. Without walls. Without tables. Without screens. But beneath the fear was something stronger. Curiosity. The same thing he'd admitted to. I was curious about his face in green light. Curious about his scent in a living space. Curious if the man in the rain was the man in these words. When? His reply came instantly. Saturday, 10 a.m. I'll be on the bench by the fountain. If you come, I'll be happy. If you don't, I'll understand. I'll still be glad you considered it. He gave me all the power. Saturday came. I stood in front of my tiny mirror. The Omega looking back still had shadows under his eyes. But his gaze was steady. This wasn't the one from the rain. This was Leo. Leo with a job. Leo with a room. Leo with a name someone else knew. I walked toward the river. Toward the greenhouse. Toward Kale. I saw the glass building first. Then the fountain. Then him. Kale sat quietly on the bench, hands resting on his knees, watching the water. He wasn't waiting loudly. He was just there. When he turned and saw me, something soft passed over his face. He didn't stand. He simply made space. "Hi, Leo," he said. "Hi," I whispered. I sat beside him, leaving careful space between us. His scent reached me: cedar, black tea, earth. Real, warm, steady. "Thank you for coming," he said, looking at the fountain instead of at me. "The greenhouse is through there. But we don't have to go yet. Can we sit here first?" I asked. "Of course," he replied. "As long as you want." We listened to the water, to the birds. My heart slowly stopped racing. "I was nervous," I said. "So was I." I turned to him. "Why?" "Because you matter," he said quietly. "And the thought of frightening you terrifies me." Something unlocked inside my chest. "I'm not frightened," I said. "Can we go in now?" "I'd like that." The greenhouse felt like another world. Warm, green, alive. We walked slowly. No pressure. No grabbing. Just presence. In a corner thick with jasmine, I stopped. He stopped with me. A half step behind. Light filtered through the tall glass panels above us, breaking into soft fragments that glimmered on the leaves. The air was warm and damp, heavy with the scent of soil and flowers and something faintly sweet I couldn't name. It wrapped around me, sinking into my skin, loosening the tight coil of fear that had lived there for so long. Kale stood a respectful step away, not crowding, not looming, just present. I could feel him, though, the quiet gravity of him. His scent was muted here beneath the jasmine and greenery, but it was still there, steady and grounding. It made my chest ache in a way that wasn't painful, just full. "I come here when my thoughts get loud," he said softly, as we walked down a narrow path between tall, fern-like plants. "It reminds me that things can be fragile and still grow." I nodded. My throat felt tight. Everything about this place felt like it was speaking directly to me. We stopped near a small bench tucked between 2 large flowering bushes. Pale petals drifted slowly to the floor like soft rain. For a moment, neither of us sat. I was suddenly too aware of how close he was, of how real he was. No glass, no phone screen, just him. "Kale?" My voice came out thin. I swallowed and tried again. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," he said immediately. I hesitated, staring at a cluster of white blossoms. If I looked at him, I might lose my nerve. "Why me?" I asked. "Really, not the nice version. The real one." He didn't answer right away. I could feel him thinking carefully, like he didn't want to give me something untrue just to make me feel better. "Because you didn't ask me for anything," he said at last. "That night in the rain, you didn't try to sell yourself. You didn't beg. You didn't flatter me. You just existed. And you were hurting." I turned toward him then, unable not to. "That shouldn't make me special." "No," he agreed. "But it made you real." Something trembled in my chest. I let out a slow breath. "I need you to know something," I said, "before this goes any further. Before I start wanting things I might not be able to handle. His gaze sharpened, not with alarm but with focus. Okay. I'm not an easy Omega, I said quietly. I don't come with pretty instincts and soft trust. I freeze. I flinch. I run. Sometimes I go numb. Sometimes I panic when someone is kind to me. He didn't interrupt. I've been hurt, I went on, my fingers curling into the fabric of my sweater. By alphas. By people who said they wanted to protect me. So if you're doing this because you think I'll be grateful or loyal or convenient, my voice cracked, you'll be disappointed. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Kale stepped just a little closer. Not close enough to touch, just close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. I don't want a convenient Omega, he said. I don't want gratitude, and I don't want obedience. I looked up at him, my heart pounding. I want honesty, he said. I want the Leo who's scared and the Leo who cracks jokes about terrible coffee. I want the Leo who needs space and the Leo who sometimes wants to be seen. My breath hitched. If that means sometimes you run, he continued, voice steady, then I'll stand where you can find me when you stop. Something inside me broke open. Tears slid down my cheeks before I could stop them. I turned away, embarrassed, but he didn't comment. He didn't reach for me. He just stayed. I'm afraid, I whispered. I know. I don't know what this is. I know that too. I let myself sit down on the bench, suddenly weak. After a second, he sat beside me. Not touching, not too close, but there. I don't need you to promise me anything, he said. Not love. Not forever. Not even tomorrow. I looked at him through wet lashes. Just don't disappear without letting me know you're still alive, he said gently. That's all I ask. A shaky laugh slipped out of me. It sounded broken and real. I can try, I said. That's enough. We sat there in the soft, green quiet. The truth laid bare between us. Messy, fragile, and somehow still safe. And for the first time, I believed that maybe I didn't have to be whole to be wanted. The city felt different after the greenhouse. Not brighter, not